Oh hi, I didn't see you there. Today we're going to be doing a build log that's going to be a little different from anything else that we've ever done before. I will be doing the ultimate space-saving PC by not just building a computer into a tiny case, but having no case at all. Building a computer into the bottom of a desk. It's going to be awesome. So I bought pretty much all the hardware that I'm using on McMaster-Carr. Those guys have almost everything under the sun. You can get L brackets and all kinds of different shapes and sizes. See, I've got all kinds of different kinds that I measured out in terms of what I needed. You can get screws in pretty much any length and thread. So I had to gather up a bunch of the different kinds of screws, as well as these cool housings. I'll show you how I'm gonna use those later. There was one thing that I was not able to get on McMaster-Carr though, and it was this. This is motherboard standoffs. Now I could have just salvaged these from a case we had lying around, but I wanted this build log to reflect how you guys would go through the process, and you might not have those lying around, so I got those on Amazon. We've got our Asus GeForce GTX 980 Ti Strix that they sent over for this video. This will give us some gaming capability, even though this is like a stealth type of build. Well, not just some gaming capability, I mean pretty much as good as it gets. The motherboard will be using the stylish saber-tooth Z97 Mark S from Asus. This is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've used this board before and it's fine, which is good. Number two is I actually really like the idea of having this protective shield over top of my motherboard in this case, because on the bottom of the desk, it could happen that I could accidentally touch it somehow and the motherboard would be the worst thing in the system pretty much to short out. So their thermal armor comes in handy once. For the RAM, we went with some matching Kingston HyperX Fury RAM. This is a 2-stick kit, a total of 16 gigs. Mostly we just went with the white RAM because we got the white board, and what the hey, why not? And on the subject of what the hey, why not, I dug out our white AX860i power supply from Corsair that I actually painted back when we did our Sub-Zero build guide. So to go with that though, as you guys may or may not have noticed, this is not a standard case. And the power supply might not actually be able to reach all of the components with the standard cables. So I reached out to our buddies over at Cable Mod, who hooked us up with some custom length white individually sleeved Cable Mod cables. Yeah, these are gonna come in handy for a build like this. This is the Intel Core i7-5775C. This is a Broadwell-based desktop CPU, and basically it's an upgrade for anyone who's using a Z97 platform already, and with one of the big improvements over the previous Haswell-based chips being that it has much better onboard graphics. To cool it, we'll be using an H100i GTX. I think we were actually planning to use a 110i GTX originally, but whether it's due to, you know, the 100i using 120mm fans and therefore being slightly lower profile, or whether it's because Corsair forgot to ship us one of those, I'm not sure. We're using this one now. And finally, as much for show as it is for performance, we'll be using two Intel 7 30 series SSDs. In this case, we've got a couple of 480 gigs. That'll give us a total of 960 gigabytes of RAID 0 SSD storage for this rig. Oh yeah, and we've got some Noctua fans for the cooler there. And here's our next component, two LG ultra-wide 34-inch monitors. So these are the 34UC87C. The main difference between these and the one that I've used in the past being that it has a height adjust stand. Not that that matters, because we'll be using a modified Ergotron desk mount, like individual stand that's actually got a widescreen gaming forum edition upgrade to it with like a bolt through on the desk. So that's gonna be pretty sick. So step number one, after setting up our workstation, being all, you know, safe and clutter-free, of course. No, actually, all this is stuff that we're working on, is gonna be to actually redo my test fit, just to make sure that when we start drilling, because we will be drilling for this build log, everything is in exactly the right place. For components like the power supply, graphics card, and motherboard, we're gonna need to be extra careful that we're leaving enough room for I/O, because depending on what type of table you have, you might have some kind of a reinforcing lip around the outside that if you position your I/O ports too close to, might make it impossible to plug in any USB connectors. So definitely watch out for that. Another pro tip is when you're mounting something like a power supply. You're gonna wanna make sure that even if normally you would go fan side down, now you go fan side up, because otherwise you're not gonna have any cooling for that particular component. This is, well, actually it's a pair of PCI Express extenders, and these are one of the very common tools in the toolbox for people who do wall-mounted PCs or other sort of unusual form factor PCs. You can usually get away with up to about 30 centimeters of extension from a PCI Express 16X slot without seeing any degradation in performance, as long as they're of sufficient quality. So we'll be using these in order to mount our graphics card. There we go, flat against the table, just like that. Fan positioning is going to be kind of personal choice. You'll have to decide, do you want the slightly warm breeze blowing towards your legs, or do you want it blowing away from it? Neither is going to offer any tangible benefit or disadvantage in terms of cooling, so you can go whatever route you want. I'm going to go with blowing the air away from my legs, just in case they're feeling a little chilly. Now, before I finalize where all of the components are going to go, I need to go ahead and put my custom cables on and make sure that both I sent CableMod the right measurements and they made the cables to my exact specifications, because we might have to make some slight adjustments to where we're positioning things otherwise. So here's our 8-pin CPU connector. Look at this thing. Ah! Now, just because the cables are going to be hidden away under a desk doesn't mean that's any excuse to have crappy cable management. So the way that I've planned out the build is to have one mass of individually sleeved cables come out of the power supply and then work its way up this edge of the desk, splitting out as needed to the different parts of the motherboard and the rest of the components. So the PCI Express connectors, for example, will come out, along, over in a straight line, and then down. And the way that I plan to achieve these nice straight lines is using these Bay State cable ties. This episode not brought to you by Bay State cable ties, but basically these are just anchors that can have zip ties go through them 2 different ways, and that can screw down into the tabletop surface so that I have a really strong anchor point and I can really get those cables nice and tight and straight. So for me, the only thing that's really important back there in terms of spacing is making sure I have enough room for a normal standard USB cable. Now that I've traced the outline, is actually going to be to trace the positions of the mounting holes. So the next step involves our drill and these little puppies right here. We're going to be using these in order to be able to install our standoffs, well, into the bottom of a table surface. Ow! I'm gonna hit my head on that a lot of times. Huh. Easy as pie. Look at that. We have a rock solid mount for our motherboard to the bottom of the table here. Very, very nice. Lower the cover, lower the arm, and then go put your socket cover in a safe place. If you ever need to RMA your motherboard, you'll need to find that. Now, even though it means the radiator might get in my way a little bit later, I'm going to go ahead and mount the CPU block now. This way I can ensure that my radiator position is going to be correct when I install it, and that I'm not going to be putting too much strain on the tubing. Dennis, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm amazed at how well this is going so far. Okay, so one slightly tricky thing with getting our video card mounted towards the the back of the table so that we're less likely to accidentally bump it, is that there's not a whole lot of room for our DisplayPort cable to go into the back of our graphics card. Before we screw down the graphics card, we're going to pre-install the bulky DisplayPort cables. These are pretty much the largest cables that we'll have to plug into the back of our motherboard. The last hole we need to drill for the graphics card is actually going to be in the plastic of the shroud. Now, this is not a mounting technique that you're going to find in any kind of proper guide, but basically we'll be drilling a hole that's slightly smaller than the threading of our screw, and we'll be using just a normal screw as a self-tapping screw because the material it's going into is so soft. I spoke too early. There is still actually one thing we need to drill on the graphics card, and this one's a little bit scary. We have to drill a hole in the bottom of the PCI bracket to go with that one that we have in the top. So for the next step, I actually need something I forgot to mention before. These are 632 nuts. There we go. So we're going to put some thread locker onto the screws that we're putting into them, because I forgot washers. Washers would be another option here. Now, something we could do to get a firmer mount with our radiator is install another couple brackets on the other side. But frankly, it's so far out of the way that I'm really not that worried about it. It's just the kind of thing that you could do if you wanted more peace of mind. So for mounting the SSDs, I'm using these ones with the hole on the one side and the slot on the other. And then I'm actually going to overlap two of them, just like that, for the middle, and then put additional ones on the outsides of the SSDs. This was more luck than anything else, but with our configuration, the included SATA cables actually ended up working out perfectly. Not just with the color scheme, black and white, and sometimes red, but also in terms of length. So we're just going to run these puppies through our existing cable management loops that we've run and plug them into the board. This switch that I pulled off of an old case some time ago. So I'm just going to mount that up under the bottom of the table. Not really anything special. And all that's left now is basically just a few finishing touches. So we're going to install our memory and then plug our fan cables into the leads off of the Corsair all-in-one liquid cooler. Plug that into the motherboard. And we're pretty much ready to flip this puppy over and start working on the other side of the desk. There are some more finishing touches here. I'm going to start cinching tight all of the cable management, giving it a bit of a cleaner overall look once we're done. Not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, this actually went really well. Okay, so all that's left now is to flip it over and you have got to be kidding me. The whole thing is backwards. The chair slides in this way. The DisplayPort cables are going to come up right under the keyboard. Dennis, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm amazed at how well this is going so far.
What are you gonna do?
You know what? We might be able to take the whole leg assembly off and put it on the other way. I think it's symmetrical. Okay, no, we have a plan. All right, let's try it. Thank you, modular IKEA furniture. All right, so all that's really left now is to flip her over and find out if she works. I actually forgot the other really awesome thing about this model compared to the one that I reviewed. The VESA mount is now included. Thank you. Instead of having to use a weird janky accessory for it. Awesome. Basically, all we do is screw the thing into the thing, put this thing on top of this thing, do a test mount with our monitors to ensure that the height is correct, mount them permanently by screwing those VESA mounts that are included with the ErgoTech / Widescreen Gaming Forum stand here in, and then clipping them over these rails and locking them into place. Once they're there, you can actually make fine adjustments to them by using the, let's see, yeah, there they are, the knobs that are on the bottom, but it's recommended that you try and get things as close as you can before that. And then start plugging in all of the connectors for the back of the motherboard as well, which, as you can see, are able to just barely plug in, which is exactly how we intended it. Okay, here it is. Our mouse is charging. Here we go. So moment of truth didn't go so well. It looks like my white saber-tooth may not have survived the Sub-Zero experiment. And yeah, so we're gonna take another crack at things with our black saber-tooth Z97, the Mark I, and see if it goes a little better. This is something to consider if you are thinking about building a desk PC though, and that's that maintenance is not going to be quite as easy as it used to be. Actually, I guess I could have flipped the desk over. You've got to be kidding me. Uh-oh. Moment of truth. It's so quiet. Is it even on? Hey, hey! Oh. Okay, so I think it's time to do a recap then for y'all, because we ended up having to change a couple things. So number one thing that we changed was our PCI Express power connectors. It looks like we got a couple of bunk ones. These kinds of things happen. At least it wasn't the 8-pin because, and this was serendipitous, the other thing that didn't work was 2 of these PCI Express extensions at the same time. Maybe the ones we got were not actually shielded or whatever else was the issue, but one of them is working fine, but that meant I had to turn my graphics card around. So being able to use shorter cable mod cables that I already had lying around ended up working just fine, and I was able to use some of the extra brackets that I bought to remount the graphics card with about 1 inch of space between it and the table, which is actually not that bad and better in some ways, because now at least you can't accidentally put your knee or a finger into the fan on the bottom of the card. So that is it, my friends. It worked. Thank you for watching the desk PC build log here. If you disliked this video, then I think you know where that button is. Man, you guys all know where that button is. If you liked it though, do click like, do get subscribed, and do consider supporting us. Maybe by buying a cool t-shirt. Actually, this is a long sleeve shirt because I'm baller like that. By buying a shirt like this one, by changing your Amazon bookmarks, one with our affiliate code, instructions are up there, or by the other thing, right, directly contributing through the forum. You get a cool little contributor badge and all that good stuff. So without further ado, thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys again next time.